Welcome to the Building Business Relationships Show. I'm Matt Stone, and before we officially launch, we are exploring what matters most when it comes to relationships in business. These early episodes are about testing ideas, learning from guests, and hearing what you think belongs in the conversation. So please do listen or watch, share your thoughts, and help shape what this show becomes. And I'm so excited because today, joining me is Arthi Rabikrisson. Did I
You
say
said
that
it
right?
perfectly. Well done, Matt.
Yes. She is amazing, but let me get into some details about why. She's a global award-winning leadership coach, keynote speaker, and thought leader who helps transform individuals and organizations for peak performance. As founder of the Prerna Advisory, a firm dedicated to coaching, capital raising, alternative investments, and strategic consulting, RT draws on intensive 16-year corporate legacy in the investments industry, spanning equity research, talent management, capital raising, portfolio leadership, business transformation, coaching and mentoring, and more. RT's unique value chain of expertise and wealth of unconventional insights, which we are excited about today, especially in these environments, enable her to guide leaders and teams to unlock their talent potential, focusing on human-centered, ecosystem-based approaches that deliver impact for people, planet, and profit. The three
Amazing.
Ps. RT's approach is rooted in deep relational intelligence, global investor networks, and a structural mindset that fits companies and cultures across industries and geographies. Basically, she's an amazing, badass woman of the world, helping tons of people and companies. And now she's here with us today. Thank you,
Oh
RT.
man, Matt, that was such a blushing kind of moment in terms of the introduction. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today.
Oh, awesome. Well, now, as you know, RT, in this format, we dive right
Yes.
in. Looking back, what's a business relationship that's had a major impact on your
Oh,
career and or your
oh,
life?
Matt, I think there's several actually. And I think for many of us, if we think and reflect back, we'll realize there's been a few. But if I have to pin it down to one, I would say it was probably early in my career. And it was a line manager of mine who basically, kind of said to me, Arthi, I can see you're very strategic. I can see that you've got a very, very different pathway. And remember, I was in a very technical role. I was junior, I was in a technical role, I was an equity analyst in the investments industry. And Matt, that pathway is like pretty set, right? You're going to do particular
Yeah.
studies, you're going to do particular courses, you're going to follow and become a senior analyst, rated, all of that good stuff. So he basically said to me, Arthi, I can see you're something different here. And in effect, what he did was he just opened up this pathway to something completely different. So what ended up happening was, and I like to call it almost a three-dimensional view of where my career could go. He just put so much opportunity and trust in me, trust in the sense that, Arthur, you can do this, that it really shaped my trajectory. Suddenly, I was doing something outside of the norm from a study perspective. I was doing my MBA instead of a CFA, and I was pretty young. I was suddenly sitting in these senior forums and they were asking for my voice. And I was like, "Ooh, this is amazing." And I was also getting a chance to shape other people's trajectories as well. I was mentoring, I was doing a bit of coaching. So that ultimately, and over the rest of my career, basically ended up landing where I am today, doing what I'm doing in that beautiful introduction that you shared with everyone. So
Mm.
that's really the one that stands out, I must admit.
It's so amazing to me how critical it is to hear certain things from other
Yeah.
people in order to see ourselves for what our real potential is. We can't see it clearly. And someone says, have you thought about this? You're really great at X, Y. And you're like, oh, your whole world opens up. And that it just catapults you.
Does. It really does. And I think, it comes down to, what mark does that then leave for you, right? Because if that trust that I'm talking about that he gave in me, I mean, in a way, it almost gave me permission to sort of say, hey, you can think a bit bigger now, right? You can actually expand where you want to go. You can try and fail, you can potentially even reciprocate what you're receiving from that person as well. So there's this big element of reciprocity. And I've noticed that that's something that I tend to do. Not only did I give back into that relationship, but I've given it forward in other relationships too. So imagine just that one can unlock so much. Exactly what you said.
You anticipated my next question, so we could check that off. You work with so many different types of businesses and clients and across
Yeah.
geographies, even. What are some of the most common relational issues that you see pop up when you're working with clients?
Oh, I almost feel at the very, very heart of it. I mean, yes, we talk about conflict, communication, like these buzzwords that come in, right? When somebody sits in a session with me. But Matt, ultimately, what's underlying all of that is actually relational understanding, and building out that relationship capital. And that's actually what I'm finding, right? So a lot of the time, I'm working with senior leaders, middle managers, yeah, across the spectrum, actually. But ultimately, they're very technical. I'm very strong in my skill set, in my competencies, and I'm really, really struggling when it comes to that people element. And that's what I'm finding, that the ability to build a network, and not just build a network, but to maintain a network. That's where the biggest emphasis and time has to be taken, right? For me, that's the crux of it. So that's where I end up spending a lot of time helping, across the spectrum, people to kind of identify, well, how do I stay real in my relationships? And that's key, right? How do I be authentic? How do I ensure that I'm responding effectively? How am I aligning to others, but also showing up in a particular way? How do I lead them in this relationship too? So it's like all of these different elements that come in just to help build this kind of relational capital. So yeah, these elements, that relationship aspect definitely underlies everything. And that's at the heart of what's going on here. People have forgotten how to invest in social capital.
Yeah. Or they never
Or they
learned
never learn. That's
fully,
true. That's
right?
true.
I don't even like the word networking much
Yeah.
anymore, to be honest with you, because it's like almost dehumanizes the process. It's really about building trust with people, and then you'll want to help them out, and
Exactly.
you'll want to do it just out of the kindness of your heart, and then have a good business
Yes,
outcome.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Typically, again, it's like one of those words that has been so overdone and overused that people forget what it's actually meant to be. And it is actually the beautiful C word, which is connection. Right?
connection.
And
Yeah,
that, again, that trust
yeah,
element, that if you get that right, oh my gosh, that connection element just becomes so strong, Matt. I mean, you and I are almost
yeah,
testament of that, right? COVID was such a
yeah.
big launch pad that we were able to form a relationship. And everyone, I don't think you know this, but Matt and I, we only got a chance to meet once when I flew across the ocean to New York. And that was an amazing, amazing get together. But we had met prior to that only virtually. So, that ability for us to have built that kind of rapport, that kind of connect, that kind of trust for us to share. I mean, Matt, we can't even put a price on that, right? So you're quite right. It's the
No,
trust element, it's the connection element, and it's what comes after that. Like I said, how do I ensure that I'm doing some of the little things that show that I care about somebody, that show that I want to be a part of, who you are, and how does that actually show up? We talk about presence, we
yeah,
talk about being real, we talk about showing our vulnerabilities because people see that human side of us and we connect. But yeah, true connection, it takes work. You just don't connect like this, like
yeah.
you're plugging in a USB point and that kind of connection. Actually, have to keep it going, everybody. So yeah, absolutely spot on.
You got to feed it,
Gardening.
nurture it, yeah, water it like a garden. Yeah,
Absolutely.
and also I think what you're saying in different words is something I
Yeah.
really believe in, which is building trust for trust's sake, not for what you're going to get
Yeah.
out of it. Just build the trust for trust's
Yes.
sake, and the rest then becomes natural and easy. Then you're not
Yeah.
worried about it. But unfortunately, what I've noticed with a lot of networking groups is because of the format and the way that they're
Yes.
formed, there's sort of this forced transactionalism that I think
Right.
runs, it's not intentionally done this way, but for me, there's always this conflict of like, I have to be transactional with you because we're in this group,
Yeah.
but I would rather just learn about you and your family and get to know who you are as a person because
Absolutely.
that's what's going to decide whether or not I ever think of you when I'm referring.
Exactly.
Is who would I
That
trust?
transactional element,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, it's I don't know, what's actually spurring that to become the norm now in terms of relationships. And
Mm,
look, maybe it's a couple of things. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's fear of vulnerability even, right?
right.
um
Right.
maybe it's this highly competitive nature that we're in, where everyone feels, well, to be honest, it's not just a feeling. If you think of the way organizations are set up, it's very much I'm measuring success based on who I'm competing against, right? So this sense of, you know, let's actually connect and do things together and let's win together. It's only like now that we're getting the surge of understanding that actually, you know what, you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That adage. But I think it's all of these bits that kind of underlie why it's been pervading in this very transactional way. If anything,
Mm.
and I mean, if we think about over time, some of our biggest relationships that we formed have been absolutely powerful and transformational, not transactional. And I think that's probably the cue that we all need to consider. Like, am I investing in this relationship because it's transformative? Well, actually, it's just transactional. I'm going to get something out of it and I'm going to walk away. You know, we have to ask ourselves these things.
Yeah. And such a different
Very,
energy. Those two
very
things,
different
such a different
energy.
energy. Oh my goodness. Once again, you're already anticipating kind of where I'm going. Let's pull on this thread just a little more because, as I was talking with you before we started recording, one of the big goals of these pre-launch conversations is to flush out topics that we should put on the table for
Yeah,
our roundtables. And you got to be a part of some of our roundtable discussions,
I'll
by
be
the way. I'm going to be
excited. Oh,
inviting you
thank you. That would be amazing.
because we want a global perspective. We want a perspective from all
Yeah,
different backgrounds and professional
yeah.
focuses, etc. So I think you'd be a great additional voice to some of
Thanks,
these.
Matt.
One of them I want to talk about is
Yeah,
networking. Asking the question, do networking groups
right.
work? Or is it broken? And really get into it and have a debate
Oh,
over that. What are some other things along those lines or
yeah.
other lines that come up for you that we're not talking about enough
Mm,
in terms of relationships that we should be?
okay. Such a great question, Matt. And I would say, if I look at my experience and like what I'm involved in, and oftentimes I find we're doing one of two things, right? We're kind of mentoring and paying it forward in that way, or even coaching as well, or we're needing to almost lead upwards, meaning that I'm needing to make my boss look really good. We're kind of doing this vertical pathway around relationship building. So I'm sharing my expertise down, but I'm also pushing up. And I think the thing that we don't talk about enough is actually horizontal relationships, right? Our peers, our friends, our colleagues, even our competitors, where possible. And the reason potentially why we're not talking about that is because the other type of relationship and networking, if you want to call it management, is very visible. Like if you're mentoring somebody, people know about it, there's outcomes. Similarly, if you're pushing upward and you're making your boss look really good, of course he's tooting the horn and calling you out. But if when you're looking at your colleague and you're offering, wisdom or guidance or advice, it's done in these quiet corners. Nobody toots the horn of, hey, my colleague really, really helped me, unless they're very receptive to doing that. Oftentimes it goes unnoticed. And I believe, and I'm noticing in the African context, we're spending a lot more time now thinking about peer circles and thinking about how we're leveraging that as an opportunity to actually grow relationships on that breadth spectrum, on that horizontal spectrum. And I think we need to be talking more about it because there's such beautiful energy, there's such beautiful solutioning that comes out of that. There's almost an unmasking as well. Like, I can actually be myself with these people because we're at that level where we can do that. There's some really, really beautiful things that transpire out of it. And I would really love for us to think about deliberately what's holding people back from joining these types of things, right? Maybe it is that transactional element and some of the other things I mentioned earlier as well, the competition, the vulnerability, and all of that. But then, if that's the case, how do we flip the switch on that and actually get a lot more of that going? I mean, I'm a firm believer that if you're actually boosting the signal for everybody, everybody's going to download success. Let's do that, right? Let's do that. So, yeah, I think that's an area to consider potentially. Yeah,
Love it. And yeah, and getting out of the zero sum game kind of mentality
yes,
that in order for me to win, someone else has to
absolutely.
lose. Let's dive into peer circles more And I would just ask that you send me anything along the way as you're experiencing it in your
Thank
region
you.
or wherever. And let's cross pollinate these
Nice.
ideas and put them on the table for
Yes, we'll do
discussion.
that. Absolutely.
So, Peer Circles with Arthi. Okay. One final question. Now, you know
Right.
a bit more about the show than the average Joe, as we might say, or Josephina. So, what excites you most about the launch of the Building Business Relationship show?
Oh, I think it even harks back to what I said at the beginning of the show, Matt. The fact that we are focusing on relational capital in your show, phenomenal. There's so many areas around this. There's gonna be learning, there's gonna be guidance. You're gonna be hearing from the best voices in the business doing this. And what it really excites me is that we're actually gonna, and I know how you are, Matt, with this, we're gonna go under the surface. We're really gonna dig deep. And I'm excited for that because I think the listeners, the subscribers to the podcast are really going to get that, let's pull the wool off. Let's actually get to the nitty gritty of what's going on here. And from that, how do we actually build and elevate and amplify the good that can come from actually building that relational capital? So that's what really excites me. We're going to get to the heart and we're going to make it bigger, extend the circle.
Yes, I love it. And hear from all voices and,
Voices.
different strokes for different folks too. I mean, there's different ways of approaching these things depending on where you are and
Yeah.
cultural differences. And I want to get all that out there.
Yes.
So, um, oh my goodness, what a pleasure. What a joy. Our time
Amazing.
has come to an end for today on this, but thank you so much for just being you and being so generous with your thoughts and ideas and sharing.
Thank you so much, Matt. It's been an absolute, absolute pleasure. The time has gone so quickly. And everyone, if you have not hit subscribe, please do right now. I mean, this is going to be the show you want to be listening to. Thanks, Matt. It's been great chatting.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to pick up on that. Please be an early adopter and don't be shy about sharing ideas for the show. The best feedback we can get is about what kind of topics, and the more controversial, the better. What are we not talking about? This show needs to push boundaries, and that's why we're also going to have a healthy dose of comedy in the show, because comedy is a great way to keep it entertaining and break the norm while we talk about things that might be uncomfortable too. So, we're going to be doing that. And with that, thanks for listening to the Building Business Relationship show. This pre launch phase is all about discovery. So if something sparked your interest, we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts, ideas, or guest suggestions and help us shape the conversations to come. And of course, subscribe and like these videos, especially on YouTube, but also on other formats. So you'll be the first to know when we officially launch. And in the meantime, when new content drops. Thanks again for listening and watching. We'll see you next time.